Hi everyone and welcome to my channel where we talk about everything true crime. My name is Megan Celine. I hope you're having a great day so far. Today's Twisted Tuesday and let's get into it. So Tuesday's part of the series is Twisted Tuesday, and I want to use this day to talk about different books that I've read that are based on true crimes that have happened. So first we're going to deep dive into the case. I'll tell you all about it, then at the very end we'll talk about the book. Alright, you guys ready for this one? Let's get into it. I don't know why my thumbs went the opposite direction, but oh well. So today we're going to be talking about Tony Costa. He was a serial killer that preyed on women in different towns in Massachusetts in the late 1960s. First and foremost, before we get into this case, I just want to say my heart truly goes out to the families and loved ones of victims or anybody that was affected by this case or any case I've ever talked about on any of my platforms, because that is never my intention. My intention here is to spread awareness and just hopefully make a difference. I just want you all to know that I'm here for you, and it is never my intention to hurt anybody. And also, disclaimer, just in case these kind of cases can be a little bit of a trigger to anybody, I'm not going to get too graphic, but just in case, I know even for me personally, sometimes the smallest thing can be kind of harmful. So So by the late 1960s, the hippie scene in Provincetown, Massachusetts was in full flow, and at the center of it all was 24-year-old divorced carpenter named Tony Costa. He was called Sire by a group of young women that trusted and followed him, also because he passed out drugs like candy. His good looks and charisma initially protected him from suspicion when a number of girls started disappearing in May of 1968. However, that only lasted so long. Well, supposed good looks, I should say. He was very good at manipulating people. Also, in case the sire part sounded confusing, that was basically what a lot of young women referred to him as, just because he was basically their leader and they looked up to him. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm absolutely terrible at pronouncing names, and I don't want to disrespect these people or their families or anybody at all. So since everything is written here, I may refrain from actually saying some of these names just because, like I said, I don't want to disrespect anyone. It began with the disappearance of 18-year-old Sydney, who was last seen alive while getting into a car with Tony. Sydney then vanished without a trace, and she was one of the 19 teenagers to disappear from Provincetown in 1968. Several months later, on September 10th, another local teen named Susan Perry also went missing. She was a known follower of Tony, whom he often disgustingly referred to as his kid chick, whatever that really means. I don't think I even want to know. When investigators came by asking questions, Tony said she left to start a new life somewhere in Europe. It wasn't until the disappearance of Patricia and Mary Ann that suspicion grew and began to point in the right direction. They were both in their 20s at the time and decided to spend the weekend in Provincetown together in January 1969. Patricia was a second-grade teacher and Mary Ann was an education major at Rhode Island College. During their visit to Cape Cod, the women had been staying at the same boarding house that Tony was living in, and he had even given them a ride into town on January 25th. That was sadly the last day they were seen alive. Police quickly launched an investigation when they were informed that the women failed to turn up for work and school. They soon found an odd note on the door of the room where they'd been staying that said, "We are checking out. Thank you for your many kindnesses." That note just left me pretty uneasy. Then on February 2nd, Patricia's light blue Volkswagen was found parked 30 feet inside a wooded area in the nearby town of Truro. Weirdly enough, the car had been parked next to an area where Tony grew marijuana and stashed his other drugs. Police began searching the area, and on February 8th, they found the mutilated remains of Susan Perry, who had been missing for 5 months at that point. Her body had been cut into multiple pieces and her head was decapitated. It's hard to go into graphic detail about details, but horrifically, her entire body was mutilated. Then a month later, Mary Ann's head and torso were found in a nearby forest clearing. That horrific discovery was soon followed by finding the body of Patricia Walsh. Both women had been mutilated, but it appeared that both died from gunshot wounds to their head. This case only got harder to read about because it's also said that he shot the two women before sexually assaulting their corpses. He then hung them from a tree and began cutting them open and mutilating them in different horrific ways before burying them in a shallow grave. In that same area, investigators would later find the remains of Sydney, and unfortunately they were found in the same horrific way. Tony Costa was soon arrested for the murders and was suspected of killing two other young women named Bonnie Williams and Diane Fedoroff, whom he had offered to drive from Pennsylvania to California in 1966. Unfortunately, the two women never made it to their destination and were never seen again, though of course he insisted he dropped them off. During his time in California, police also believe he murdered his girlfriend, Barbara Spalding, in 1968. After leaving her child with relatives one day, Barbara vanished on the same day that Tony left to return to Massachusetts. Barbara was never seen alive again, and her body was never even found, so her family is still living without answers today. Though it was never fully confirmed, it is also believed that he murdered Christine Gallant. She was killed on November 23, 1968, in her New York City apartment, and no one was ever charged with her murder. So heartbreakingly, that's another family that had to go on without justice. Tony Costa was only charged for the deaths of Patricia and Mary Ann. He maintained his innocence in each case and blamed the crimes on both real-life acquaintances and an evil alter ego he called Corey. In May of 1970, he was convicted of those two murders and was sentenced to life in prison. However, 4 years into incarceration, he committed suicide by hanging himself in his cell. In later years, his suicide was questioned as a possible inmate murder. Neither was ever confirmed, but either way, good riddance. I only wish that he would have served more time and at least suffered in some kind of way for the horrible things he did. So this is Casey Sherman, and during his research for his book, he went through over 2,000 documents related to the case, and even a manuscript that was written by Tony Costa himself. He basically uses that manuscript to get inside Tony's head at each murder scene, disclosing what his inner voice, or Corey as Tony liked to call it, was apparently telling him as he carried out those horrific acts. He also had 12 hours of recorded conversation of Tony from when he was behind bars, so needless to say, he did his research for this. This is it. I know it's backwards because my camera and editing skill, recording skill, they still suck, okay? I'm learning, I'm getting better. I promise I'll improve. Just please stick around for me with this journey. But this is the book. It is incredibly hard to put down. It's called Helltown, The Untold Story of a Serial Killer on Cape Cod by Casey Sherman. The author goes really in depth and shares details about the case that most have never even heard before. The way he tells the story and the way he incorporates other historical events that were happening at the same time, it really makes you feel like you're there. Not only in the book with those people, but like you're actually in that time frame in history, you know, reliving all these moments with these people. And it's just really hard to put down because it's not only very intriguing, but very educational in a way, because it's a whole different perspective to so many crazy things that were going on at that time. And if you grew up loving to read books like me, then you know what that feeling is like, and this is definitely one of those books. Not even only that, I mean, there's so much to it, but this book was written with so much respect to the victims and their loved ones, and that's honestly really hard to do because it's a very fine line between talking about those kind of things and not coming off a certain way. That's why I'm very apprehensive sometimes or nervous about how I start my videos because I never want to come off that way. And so this book is amazing. It sheds light on so many things and brings so many big world issues to perspective and things that people should really think about and talk about. Shockingly though, when this book first came out, actually it was just released this summer, July, I'm pretty sure, of this year. And when it first came out, him and another author received a lot of backlash. And it wasn't even from the family and loved ones of the victims like one might think. It was actually from the family and loved ones of Tony Costa himself. Like, what? How do you even have that audacity? It's honestly utterly ridiculous. I mean, really, the audacity. Yeah, that crap is nonsense. This book is amazing, and I can't tell you enough how worth it is to read. And also keep an eye out because last I heard, Robert Downey Jr.'s production team, Team Downey, they've actually acquired rights to Helltown, and they're fast-tracking a limited TV series. So I think that'll be really interesting. I'm actually very excited for that to come out, and I'll keep you posted if I hear anything else about it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this story and, I don't know, watching me make a fool of myself because I'm still learning how to not be awkward on camera, but we're getting there. I'll get there, I promise. But thank you guys so much for everything. This all really means a lot to me. All the support and continued, I don't know, just the continued support that I've had throughout this journey has been amazing, and I can't thank you enough. You've been great, and I just want to say that I'm here for all of you, no matter the situation. If you just need a listening ear or maybe you need some advice on a bad situation, please reach out to me. My email will be down below in the description, and like I said, never hesitate to reach out because I'm only one person, but I promise you I will do anything I can to help you. Also, shoot me an email if you have a specific case you want covered or anything you want me to talk about in particular. Just reach out to me and we'll talk about that also. Thank you guys so much again. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow.